Mhm. Again, again, again. All right. And I think it's a bit loqui. All right. And we are live. All right. Gagihit loquigi Instagram. Again, but so total. All right. Hafa de todos hamzu buena hudzun buenas. Buenas. This is another episode of Fanachu. Hafa tatat manu hamzu. How is everyone doing out there? Again, it is Museum Month. It is Museum Month. And Taigwizu, Gidzaguahan, Inan Husi Michael Luhan Bavakwa. My name is Michael Luhan Bavakwa, your usual host for Fanatsu. It is Museum Month. I am away from the Marianas. I am in California attending the American Alliance of Museums. And I thought, so Kaleng este mahaling zu. I've only been away from Guam for a few days. Lo este Kaleng mahaling zu. Para itanota siha. I'm already missing the Marianas. And so I was trying to figure out and schedule what would be a nice sort of episode to have happen around this time that I knew I was going to be away from the Marianas, but that would make me feel sort of connected to back home. And I thought, let's have an artist. Let's have an artist episode because on Fanatsu, we bring activists, we bring scholars, we bring elders, we bring all sorts of people to talk about the Chamorro experience, to talk about Chamorro history, language, all sorts of stuff. We also have artists. And so as you can see from the flyer here, we have a Chamorro artist who brings to her work some very deep rooted ancient motifs, but also, as we will talk about, some very critical contemporary, some very cogent critiques and motifs as well. And so this is a bonito na amo desti pari minahalanghu. This is great for my long distance mahalang to have Gillian Duenas, who is joining me from University of Hawaii Manoa, where she is in a Pacific Island Studies master's program. And she will be here talking about her art and her research that she is doing. And so, Sidzus Masi, thank you for joining for this episode of Fanatsu Sidzus Masi.
Yeah, Hago Mas, I'm so honored and excited to be on this episode. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh no, Hogomas, Hogomas. And so let's start off Cosinho and introduce and Maisa how put fabot. On Fanatsu, we're all about the Chamorro identity in all of its varied multivocal forms. And so what is your Chamorro identity? Did you grow up in the Marianas? Did you grow up away from the Marianas? What is your Chamorro family names? Tell us more about your Chamorro experience. Put fabot.
Yes, so Guahu si Gillian Duenas, familien Kayang Fungo Zan English tu, Mafanyagut tu, Zatu Mankalu tu, Gita Tanui Sequamish, Zan Sumasaga tu, Gita Ke Alpuni Hawaii. Name's Gillian Duenas. My clans are Kayang, Fungo, and English. I was born and raised in the land of the Suquamish people, colonially known as Bremerton, Washington. So born and raised stateside, and I'm currently living in the illegally occupied Hawaiian Kingdom. So yeah, I growing up in the States, most of my family's over there at this point. If not in Washington, then Oregon and California, West Coast. And then I went to school with a handful of other Chamorros. So I wasn't ever like the only Chamorro at school, but I definitely growing up didn't really know much about our culture and our people. I didn't really feel connected to Guahan. I only was able to visit once when I was a kid, and I was, I think, 2 turning 3 years old. It was for my grandmother's death anniversary. We all went as a family. So don't really have much memories of that trip. So I actually didn't really get to visit Guahan and establish that connection until I was 18. Um, So yeah, it's been an ongoing journey for me, navigating what does being Chamorro mean for me. And that's I'm sure will continue to evolve as I keep growing and meeting new people and being in new places. Um, but yeah, it's a little bit about where I come from. Yeah.
No, Sidus Masi, and I do want to give you a chance because you've got some amazing stuff on the wall around you and behind you. And
Yeah.
so it's and I'm seeing some cool stuff that I know my partner Desiree would love. And so can you just talk to us about, I see some of your artwork and we're going to be talking about some of that and also some woven materials. Just talk to us about what you have around you on the wall.
Yeah, I'd love to. So over here we have some lovely handicrafts from the Marshall Islands and Nauru that I got at Festpac. Also down here I have some lei that my friends have given me. Um, have a sling right here. And then I have some spondylus jewelry that I made, like necklaces and a headpiece. And then over here, some more spondylus jewelry I made, and then all my earrings and some more lei that I was gifted. And then up here are two prints of pieces that I did, Itini Tuhun, so my interpretation of our creation story, and then Tai Ulu, which is the piece with the woman holding the skull. And over here is kind of like an altar space I have. So I have like the what are they called? The funeral booklet things from my grandpa and then also my Nina who passed away last year. So yeah, just kind of wanting to cultivate an ancestral space. And yeah, I feel safe here in my room. I live at the East West Center, which is a dorm for grad students, and it's very small. So I try to make the most use of my space as I can and feel connected to home and to community and family.
Sidus Masi for sharing that. And so let's can you talk to us a little bit about, I'm going to put up real quickly some of, we saw in the flyer one of your pieces.
Mhm.
So can you talk to us a little bit about your art style and what inspires you? Because there's some specific questions that I want to ask about it, sort of things that immediately stand out to me. But first, can you just tell us about sort of your artist, kind of what inspires you, what motivates you? In your bio, you talk about sort of taking indigenous motifs, legends, and I see a few of them, immediately just going through here, these images, these paintings here that you've shared. And so talk to us just about, your philosophy as an artist.
Yeah, I think a lot of what inspires me is there'll be a moment or like I'll hear someone say something and it really strikes me and resonates with me. Um, like for example, the Tai Ulu piece, the first one that you showed with the skull. With this, I was kind of reflecting more on what my spiritual beliefs are. I mean, I grew up Catholic, most of my family is Catholic. But as I've been an adult, I've kind of been trying to learn more about what did our ancestors practice before or pre-contact, as they say. And so learning about the ancestral veneration and how sacred the head and skull was seen and was treated. I thought that was so interesting because I feel like when I was growing up and learning about the Tata Motna and hearing all those stories, it made me feel scared of our ancestors. It made me feel like they were out to get me or that they were evil in a way almost. And I feel like some Catholicism really reinforces that too. And so yeah, I was kind of reflecting more on that because times that I've been back home I never felt that way when I feel like the presence or their presence. It would feel really calming for me. And so it also made me sad learning about like the Spanish colonial period and how the missionaries, when people had their ancestors' skulls in the home, the skulls would get destroyed. Um, and it also, I was thinking about how I feel like the Tatomona are probably sad that people are afraid of them now when we had such a different relationship with them before. Um, so yeah, that's what I was thinking about when I was thinking about this piece. And um, also it's kind of a sister piece to another painting I did called Massacada, which has a similar composition where it's a woman with her eyes covered. And with that, I was thinking about inagofli'i and really seeing like what does it mean to really see each other or to really see someone, to really be seen by somebody. And so, or like tatli'i, how that is like the opposite of love and care. It's like to hate and to not see. So that was another concept I was kind of sitting with in this brainstorming period that I had before sketching this out.
No,
Um,
I no, I love to hear this as, especially the layers of interpretation and care, because somebody can look at this and enjoy it on one level, and then others can see more, see past that, and then really get into it. And just for as we're looking at this, for those who have explored caves on Guam and in the CNMI, you have incorporated, you know, uh, pictographs from Guam and the CNMI, from Rhoda, from Saipan, here's Latexan, there's Inalahan, and so on. And and it's just amazing because um in a way, yeah, it's like a reunification, a
yeah,
reunification of,
yeah.
and so I love that you've used art and to kind of unify Chamorro creativity today, but also then unify it even in the past. And so, sorry to interrupt, but please continue. And if you want me to go to another one of the pieces,
Oh
uh,
yeah, no, thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's also another piece of it too. Um, because yeah, I was thinking about how our relationship to our ancestors and our relationship to each other too, as Chamorros across the archipelago. And so yeah, I really wanted a piece that was kind of a reclamation of that type of relationship and connection to our ancestors. Um, and also too with the skull, I really like the body modification where they would like carve into the teeth and like they were stained with the pugwa. I think that looks really cool. I think it would be cool if we could bring that back somehow. And kind of because especially now with like Western beauty standards, like anything that's not like sparkling white teeth is seen as unattractive. But I think it's really cool that our ancestors felt differently. Um, but yeah, so I wanted to incorporate that too, and then the traditional Chamorro adornments, like the tifi, the spondylus. But yeah, when I was because I always try to, I really like the cave drawings from Inalahan and Chief Godow's cave. Whenever I go home, I always like to sit in there too and just kind of learn from like the OG Chamorro artists and um pay homage to them and call back to them when I'm creating my own art. But also too, I was curious about what art looked like in the other Mariana Islands too, and so I kind of did a deep dive on yeah these motifs from the Northern Mariana Islands and wanting to honor those ancestors too and how we're connected. But yeah, that's kind of the thought behind this piece is kind of trying to challenge the idea that we should be scared of our ancestors. We definitely should be respectful towards them and, follow proper protocol and everything. But I think they want to feel connected to us and I want to feel connected to them. So yeah, that's kind of the thought behind this.
no, very nice, very nice. And you have many that really emphasize the Magahaga, the matrilineal sort of aspect of Chamorro culture, Chamorro history, but then also something that sort of is strong within a lot of Pacific Island cultures as well. And so I wanted to hear more about about this. Even here, I mean, this piece is very powerful, but here, of course, Fua rock and then a very Fuuna-like figure or a Magahoga-like figure. And then so still just sort of can you talk to us about sort of the Famalawan, the Fuetsan Famalawan that you use in your work, and then connected to that though, sort of is where does this inspiration come from? Do you find it that it's something that comes from your family, your community, or is it something that you've kind of been inspired through your scholarly research, your readings, or in other ways? Can you share?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a little bit of all those things. Um, Growing up, being a young Chamorro girl, being a brown girl, that definitely was something that impacted how I navigate the world and how I experience things. I think, especially when I was younger, I would get teased a lot or told that I looked like a boy or looked like a tomboy when I wasn't necessarily trying to. I feel like um, as a younger person, I really had my femininity be denied to me by other people. Um, and then also being mixed, my dad's Chamorro, so my grandma on that side, my dad's mom, passed away when my dad was really young, so I never got to meet her and didn't really have like a Chamorro woman figure in my life like that. Of course, I had all my aunties, but I guess I felt like that was kind of a missing piece for me growing up, not having like that direct connection to a Chamorro woman um in that way. So that was also something that kind of made me feel unsure of myself or not really feeling like I knew what it meant to be a Chamorro girl or a Chamorro woman. Um, and so I didn't really get to learn more about Chamorro women and um, how our culture is very matrilineal and how women are revered and respected until I got older. Um, I think also too in my artwork, that's kind of been my way to reclaim my femininity. Um, because yeah, I feel like when I was younger, there was definitely a phase that I had where since I was hearing from other people that they thought I looked more masculine, I guess, or more like a boy, that I like wore my hair really short to kind of try to feel like I had more agency over how I was being perceived. Like, oh, if they're gonna tell me that I look more like a boy, then I'll just look like that intentionally. That way I have control over that. Even though, like now, I feel like expressing my femininity is such an important part of myself and my self-expression. Um, so I definitely had to work through that and kind of, yeah, reclaim that for myself. But I know that's a common experience for racialized women and girls. How on one hand we're like, or especially like Black and Indigenous women, we're like masculinized and seen in a certain way because of our racial and gender identities. Um, and then growing up too, I feel like in school, I'm really used to being talked down to or not taken seriously. I think a lot of that does have to do with being an Indigenous woman. In high school, I was a really good student, got straight A's. I was doing a bunch of extracurriculars, um, and I really wanted to go to college, but neither of my parents went to college, so I was kind of on my own in that regard and had to figure out how to pay for it. And so one of my strategies for paying for college was taking all these AP classes because if I could do good on the exam and get the college credit, then I wouldn't have to pay for that college credit in tuition. So my senior year of high school, I registered for 5 AP classes out of the 6 total classes we had to take. And I submitted my registration, and my school counselor called me to his office because he had concerns with my schedule. And he sat me down and he was like, I feel like this is going to be too much. I don't think you can do it. I think you need to take a few less AP classes. And I was like, well, right now I'm taking 3 and I'm doing pretty good. Like I've always got good grades. I feel like I could do it, but he was very discouraging and he was like, no, like I don't, um, I don't think that this is a reasonable schedule for you. Like, I really recommend that you don't take these classes. And I was like, okay, whatever. And like, mind you, this is like an old white guy. Like, this is a school counselor that was around when my parents went to this high school. Um, so um, yeah, he was like really trying to talk me down from it, and I was like, no, I'm gonna take these classes because you're not paying for my tuition. I'm paying for my tuition. And I ended up taking the classes, and I also was valedictorian of my high school class and was able to graduate college in 3 years because of those AP credits that I got. So that's kind of an example of the way I was treated in school. Now, I'm assuming that it had to do with my gender and race, but I'm sure that that wasn't totally out of the equation. And I think it kind of got worse once I got to college. So I went to University of Washington in Seattle, and um, I wanted to study computer science when I started, which is so far off from what I'm doing now. It's just kind of funny, but I don't know. Everyone said do STEM, that's where the money is, whatever. So I my graduating high school class I think was about 200 people, and then my first college class at UW was a lecture of 700 people. And that was such a huge culture shock for me. And because I was used to being a big fish in a small pond, right? But now I'm like a decently sized fish in a gigantic pond with gigantic fish. So that was really difficult for me. And then also too, like in this class of 700 people, how many of them are Pacific Islander? How many of them are Pacific Islander women or Indigenous women? There weren't a lot. I think at UW, when I was going there, Pacific Islanders were less than 1% of the student body. And it's probably not too much different now, unfortunately. But yeah, so um, and then like being in these STEM classes and like forming study groups and having like white male peers and being talked down to by them, you know, again, like I'm very used to being talked down to or treated like I'm incompetent. Um, yeah, so that's something that I've like an experience that I've carried with me as I've been growing up and going on these different journeys. And then when I went to grad school for the first time, so I have a master's degree in social work. Um, Again, I think my program was about 150 to 200 students. I was the only Pacific Islander in the entire program. Um, and then I was taking this clinical class, and we were talking about historical trauma, I think, and um, working with populations that have historical trauma and what does that look like as an ethical social worker or whatever. So, um, one of my classmates, who was a white woman, she went on this whole tangent about how, white people have historical trauma too. Like, we need to talk about how it impacts white people, just all these things. And I'm not saying that that was invalid, just the way that she's recentered the conversation and was not really getting the point, I think was really frustrating for me. Um, Especially like there's other students of color in the class too, and it's like, historical trauma, maybe this is the first time a lot of us are hearing this term, but a lot of us have been living with this and haven't had a choice in that, right? Whereas other folks that are in this program, like if this is their first introduction to this kind of experience, and yeah, I don't know, there just was like a lack of sensitivity there that I felt. And my instructor just kind of nodded along and didn't really challenge that or address it at all. And I felt like that was really a big failure on her part. So I raised my hand and I was like, hey, I just want to respond to what my classmate said. And I explained again how this whole program and higher education is already built to cater to whiteness and white people and white students. And so like it feels really inappropriate, especially for someone who would be working with Indigenous people, for you to have this kind of mindset around historical trauma. And when I was saying my piece, I was saying it in the same kind of tone and volume that I'm speaking now. I was kind of frustrated and also nervous to be like, speaking out in this class about this topic in this way. But I've kept it very cute, or I felt like I kept it cute. And then I was met with dead silence from my instructor and from my classmates. And then my instructor was like, okay, let's just take a 15-minute break. So at that point, I was really frustrated with her response to that. And I just decided to leave the class. And I was like, yeah, I'm not really getting anything out of this. I'm just gonna go take my space and do what I need to do to process. And so the next day, both my instructor and my classmate reached out to me via email. And my classmate was saying that she was really sorry that she made me so angry. And that really did not sit right with me because, first of all, when did I show anger? Um, I felt like, also, too, I feel like I have to be mindful of how I'm conducting myself in these spaces just for my own safety. Um, so yeah, that didn't really sit right with me. And then also like that wasn't the issue. It's not that I was angry if I was angry. It's what you said, right? So that was frustrating for me. And then my instructor did the same thing to me the next time we had class. She pulled me to the side and said, you know, I'm really sorry about like how you were angry in class last week. And I'm like, you guys are totally missing the point. And also like, why are you saying that I'm angry? Um, that feels a little racialized. So all that to say, that was the inspiration, or one of the inspirations for my piece Masakata, the woman with the machete. So I'm like, okay, if you want an angry Native woman or angry Indigenous woman, like, okay, we can go there, you know. And it's also too like I'm entitled to anger. Um, if I want to feel angry, that's my anger is telling me what is important to me and what I value, and if something is wrong. Um, so yeah, so that's another reason why I really focus on womanhood and that experience in my work too, and Chamorro womanhood. Because when I shared this piece with others, I heard from so many, not just Chamorros, not just Pacific Islanders, but so many Indigenous people from all over the globe, Indigenous women that really resonated and saw themselves in this piece and in that experience. Um, so yeah, it's a reclamation of Indigenous womanhood. Also, to another piece to this is, I think, on the flip side of being like seen as masculine and aggressive and um, those kinds of things, there's also like Indigenous women being exoticized and fetishized and seen as like, especially Pacific Islander women. Well, not, I mean, this applies to all Indigenous women, I think. It's kind of being seen as this fantasy, or like this colonial conquest, um, like experiences I've had dating non-Pacific Islander men. A lot of them will say things when they find out I'm Pacific Islander, they'll say things like, "Oh, I've always wanted to try an island girl," or "Oh, island girls are so sexy, you have such sexy dances," things like that. Um, so I think it's important for us to be represented in a way that is authentic and in a way that does celebrate our bodily autonomy and how our bodies look and how we look as women, but also um our different emotions and experiences. And yeah, like I was being, or that anger was being projected onto me, and that's not necessarily how I would have described how I felt in that moment. But also too, like if that's how I feel, that's how I feel, and it's valid. And if I'm angry, there's a reason for it. And I think anger is a lot of what keeps us going too as people. Because you should be angry when there's injustice. You should be angry when people are being discriminated or oppressed. Um, so yeah, that's kind of another piece to why I really explore that in my work too. And then yeah, I think I'm really inspired by a lot of the Chamorro women scholars, especially those who are um, kind of bringing Chamorro women back into our stories and histories. Um, Growing up, when I was learning about prominent Chamorro figures, like the first people that come to mind are like Chief Harao, Chief Matapeng, Chief Gata, like all of these men, right? Which is great. And what about the women? If we're such a matrilineal culture, if we really value women and women's role in our community, then why don't we learn about them? And so folks like Dr. Ann Hattori or Dr. Tina Delisle, like I'm really inspired by their work that they do to bring us back into the narrative and uncover those stories that are not as seen or as celebrated as some other stories are in our community.
Oh, Sijus Masian, thank you for mentioning that sort of inconsistency and that incongruency, because it's it's something that I've always found, problematic, is that there can be this celebration of, people can say, the magahaga, the matrilineal, this sort of power of women, but then there can also still be this kind of like emptiness. And
Right.
and so if and so I mean, I definitely see your art alongside the work of the women scholars sort of that you're mentioning. It reminds me of how when recently, of course, the third statue of Chief Kapua was erected in Hagatnya. The first, of course, in, I believe, 1977, and then the second one in, I think, 2016, and then now this one, the one after the last one by Typhoon Mawar knocked it down. And it makes some sense, of course, to erect another statue for Chief Kapua, because it was the one that Ricky Berdaliu put up as this statement of our connection to our past. But even this was something that was even brought up when the Guam Museum was first being made, is that you have two similar Chief Kapua dudes in front of the museum. And so, but why?
Yeah.
Why? And so even when for the so eventually funding has been made available finally by the government for the Inaftani Manyanata, which will be the shrine of the ancestors, where the remains that we care for at the Guam Museum, which is more than 3,000 of our ancestors, will be reburied so they can finally be put be at peace again. They were disturbed by hotel development, by other types of development over the past 40 years. And so when they gave the design to us of what they wanted to do, it was so funny, because they had once again put two buff dude figures at the entrance to the place. And like, the feedback that I gave and others gave was, if you want this to represent Chamorro people and Chamorro culture, number one, first, it should be an elder, and it can either be an old man or it can be an old woman, probably should be an old woman, and then put a woman, put a younger woman.
Yeah.
But don't put the same like jacked dude who never skips Susu day or whatever. I don't work out enough. I don't know. Is it day? I don't know anything about working out. So I don't know, but it's always that same over masculized, exaggerated sort of thing about our past. But so
Mhm.
that's what I find, important about the work that you're doing here, is that number one, so this is what I always like to remind people, is that what has been taken from us by colonizers, by priests, by others, in terms of disrupting our connection to our past, we may not ever be able to know it to some historian certainty, but that doesn't mean that we can't know it in
Mhm.
other ways. And so where the historian falls short, that's where the artist or the novelist or the poet comes in. And so that's what I love about your work here, is that you're making these connections and you're using what we do know. You're using the legends, you're using the pictographs, which people always ask me, what can I get like for a good Chamorro tattoo? And I'm like, oh, well, do you really want a Chamorro tattoo, or do you want like a Serena?
Yeah.
I mean, because Serena's Chamorro, of course,
Mhm.
but you want like a 1,000-year-old Chamorro tattoo, or do you want a Chamorro tattoo that's like 100 years old?
Mhm.
If you want something that's like 1,000 years old or 2,000 or 3,000 years old, then you want pictographs or pottery designs. And I love the way that in your work, you're anchoring that matrilineal, that Magahaga, the Famalawan connection, and you're filling the space with all of these artistic motifs as well. And so it's powerful. It's powerful because it's also informed by research. It's informed by what we do know about our past. And I think for me, that's one thing that makes it really good is that somebody, for example, might just put like it's one thing to have the skull, that's good, but to have the skull and then the teeth, that means that you're not just an A student in Chamorro, you're an A student, you're a Glota student in Chamorro. Imastaculo na grado na, you get the highest grade because for Chamorro nerddom. But
Yeah, I
okay.
appreciate that. That means a lot to me. But yeah, especially too, because that's the thing. If I'm putting out this art and if I'm creating these representations, I do need to be mindful of integrity of our culture and our history. Um, and I don't want to say authenticity. I feel like that's kind of not the right word. Um, but really doing that work to learn and continuing to learn is really important to me. Um, yeah, yeah, I definitely want to make sure I'm not also kind of constructing this like fantasy of our people and our ancestors. I want to um honor them as real people that lived and lived so that we could live.
Oh, si Zeus Masian. Para Hamzu ni Umeega and Genguaha question Mizu. We've already got a few questions that have come in. And so if you have any questions, put them in the comments. Don't worry, we're gonna have a chance for Gillian to answer some of your questions. But I do want to change gears just a little bit though. And so I do want to ask you about because I was showing for a second there your website. And so I've put the link into the comments for the live stream. And so what you have up here, of course, it's still up here, Typhoon Mawar relief. And so when Typhoon Mawar hit Guam in the Marianas 2 years ago, one of the things that happened was that you and others collaborated to create a mutual aid relief drive, raising funds, sending supplies home, and so on. And I think, that was for me, it was a very touching, it was a very important thing because I think one of the things that always frustrates me is that even though there are more and more ways in which we can connect across the Pacific to those who are in the diaspora and those who are in the Marianas, it's still so easy to feel disconnected. Still so easy to write off one half of the population versus the other half of the population. And so it was very powerful to see that because to see and so I wanted to have you talk about that because you had um sold prints to raise funds to send back home. And for me, this is one of the reasons that I still teach my Zoom Chamorro classes, even though the pandemic is over, is because I see it as like a form of tsinsuli. Basically, that there's more than 100,000 Chamorros in the States, many of whom don't have access to Chamorro speaking family members, that don't have access to resources for learning the language. And so one of the ways that I can help is to just keep these classes going. And so, these types of Sensuli aid networks to help overcome the geographic divides and any divides of identity too, that says that Chamorros on this side are different than those Chamorros over there, or somehow if you are a Chamorro that has a Costco card, you're better than the Chamorro that can only go to Cost You Less in Guam, or
Mhm.
what's it called? And so I wanted to hear you kind of share about your experience, what inspired you to because raise funds, because I think a lot of Chamorros didn't feel the need to raise funds or to support anything back home, thinking, FEMA's got it, or somebody else will take care of it, and so on. So, um, what motivated you? What inspired you to help in this way?
Yeah. I just remember when the typhoon was approaching, I was really keeping up with it and um like once it was coming and like there was that period of silence waiting to hear back from friends and family about what the damage was going to be. I feel like that time was like so agonizing because I was like, oh, I'm so far away and I feel so helpless. Um and also too, like people around me, like at work, never heard of the Mariana Islands. They didn't know. Like if I was talking about this, they don't know that we're US territory, right? And so yeah, it felt like if it was a few moments of like, oh my gosh, what can I do? What am I supposed to do? And after thinking about it, I was like, you know what? Like if I'm gonna be or call myself a Chamorro artist, and if I'm going to draw inspiration from our people and from our islands, like if I'm gonna be profiting off of that in any way, then I need to be giving that back. Um, and so yeah, it felt like a natural thing. I'm like, well, I don't really have a lot of resources at this point, but I do have all these prints that I have just sitting in my stock and um I let's do this, and I feel like with a art fundraiser, that can be more appealing to people than just like donating because at least they're getting something out of it. Um, and so yeah, I was like, okay, well, I wasn't really sure if it was gonna really do much or if people were actually gonna buy anything. But I was like, well, I can at least do this. This can help people, like this is help pay for drinking water um I don't know, whatever supplies people would need immediately. So yeah, I put out my fundraiser and actually was really surprised by how immediate the response was. At least for me, I mean I don't have like a whole huge following or anything. So for me, I felt like it was a lot of people. And also too, it was really cool. I think the farthest that I sent a print for the fundraiser was Rhode Island, which was really unexpected for me. I don't know if that person was a Chamorro out there or if they just happened to see my posts one way or another, but that was really cool for me and felt really um hopeful for me because like yeah, in the States, again, most people don't know about the Mariana Islands. And then also too, there's this attitude of like, oh, well, that place is thousands of miles away. Why should we care about what's going on there? So yeah, that was really unexpected and that really made me feel good that like, okay, I'm glad that this is having some reach and that people are aware of what's happening. Um, and yeah, I think yeah, that sensually is really important. So that's something I kind of grapple with all the time as an artist and in my practice. Because on the one hand, like being an artist does cost money, like the materials, the labor. And so it is helpful to be able to get some of those things back to sustain my practice. And for me, it's just kind of a little side hustle. It's not something that I'm like really invested in doing. Like I don't really care about marketing or advertising and those kinds of things. It's kind of like, well, if I have time, I'll have some stuff available people would like to purchase and be able to make some of that money back to like pay to keep my website up and again the supplies and whatnot. Um, but yeah, like again, I think especially for folks in the diaspora, that is one way to really be connected and be in community, even though we're so far away, is giving back and investing back home because the people that are back home are the ones that are stewarding our island and taking care of our island. And so if we're not able to be there to do that, this is something else that we're able to do. So that was really important to me. And that's what I saw too in our community. I feel like I saw a lot of people stepping up and um, wanting to practice that reciprocity too. And then in terms of like making stronger connections between diaspora and on island folks, I think a lot of the tension or disconnect is just a lot of misunderstandings of one another. I think one of the misconceptions about stateside Chamorros is that, oh, we're all really wealthy or like are really well off, and that's not really the case for most of us, I don't think. There's definitely a lot of different privileges that we experience in the States, and we have access to different things that folks don't have access to back home. Um, but then also too, it is hard to visit home when plane tickets cost so much. And for me, I don't really have a lot of family back home anymore either. Um, and so I feel like that's kind of maybe one thing driving some tension. And on the other side, I feel like some folks in the diaspora, um, I feel like there's kind of like a misunderstanding of what life is like back home or what it's like to be on Guahan and to feel her and to sit in that energy. Um, and then I don't know. Everyone's on their own identity journey. There's not one right way to be Chamorro. Um, but also to like, I never want to commodify our culture and our islands. I never want to like benefit in some way from our history and our stories and our art without also contributing in some way. And I think there may be some feelings from folks back home that folks in the diaspora are acting in that way. So I think that's another kind of tension that exists. But I think we have a lot to learn from each other. Obviously, for Chamorros in the States, we have a lot to learn from our relatives back home that grew up with the culture and with that knowledge. And yeah, it's definitely a very different experience. And so yeah, we always have so much to learn from our relatives back home. And on the flip side, I feel like those of us in the diaspora also have a lot to offer too and to teach. For me, growing up in Washington, I when I got to college, I was able to connect to a lot of Native communities and um, be in community with Native folks and learn from them, especially folks that are coastal. And it really like learning about them helps me learn about myself because I got to witness their different relationships to the ocean because we like the ocean that touches their land is also the ocean that touches our lands as well. Um, and how their relationship to the ocean helps me better understand my relationship to the ocean as a Pacific Islander and also growing up knowing that part of the Pacific versus the West Pacific or North Pacific. Um, and yeah, also like being aware of that history too. Why do so many of us live in the continent and what is our relationship to what's now the United States? And being aware of that it's their land. It's the Native folks that have been there since time immemorial, that they are the historical and current stewards of those lands. And what does that mean for me to be an Indigenous person living on stolen land? And how am I accountable to those communities? And I think I'm not saying that every Chamorro that lives in the States is having those kinds of opportunities to connect with folks, but I think there's a lot of us that are trying to be intentional about that and move in that way. And so I think that's something that we can also share back to our folks back home that maybe have never been to the States or aren't aware of that colonial history either. Because I feel like too, sometimes I'll hear folks talking like expressing frustration with the military buildup or people from the continent being in Guahan and being like, oh, go back to where you came from, or oh, don't test on our lands, test on your lands. But those aren't their lands either. Those are indigenous lands. And so making sure that when we're advocating for our own home, we're not just displacing the problem, but really actually eradicating it on a more global scale. So yeah, all that to say, I feel like if we just are more um curious about each other and able to teach each other, I think that's a way that we can strengthen our connections across the ocean.
Oh no, si Zeus Marcy, who go fagradesi in a petmo. there was so much there that's important. Yeah, I always say that, I mean, I to echo some of what you said, I mean, I always say that Chamorros that are in the States and Chamorros in Guam often experience the same things, and it might just be sort of at a different, they might be at a different place in sort of a colonial experience, for example, or in levels of assimilation, or for example, it may not, or sometimes people argue, oh, those in the diaspora don't want to learn.
Mm.
But then people say in Guam, oh, the youth don't want to learn. But in truth, it's just that no one is speaking tomorrow to the youth in Guam. And for those in the diaspora, there is even less chance to hear tomorrow.
Mhm.
So are you really seeing something that is coming from people's identity? Or is it really just the fact that no one is speaking tomorrow to people and you are blaming them and saying, this is your identity. This is who you are. I am judging
Yeah.
because people are not giving you an opportunity. And so that's why for me, I always try to reframe it and say that, you know, like what you said, we're going through similar sorts of things, but there may be some advantages, there may be some disadvantages here or there, but any idea that we're fundamentally different. Although in the comments, some people have said that there are Trader Joe's Chamorros, there are there are Wingstop Chamorros. Zach Visagomez, Tauta Pacific Northwest says he is a Wingstop Chamorro. Guahu and Barnes and Nobles na klasan tomorrow. That's the main thing I miss about the States is bookstores. I want big bookstores, little bookstores, independent bookstores, used bookstores. Tinahong itendan leplugit sa Guahan. Guam does not have enough bookstores. And even if the Guam bus has to start a bookstore one day, we will get more bookstores. But thank you for your very thoughtful answer. And even the part about, Native communities, that was also important because even for me, I remember when I came out to the States for graduate school and first saw some of my friends talking about coming from native lands and acknowledging the people on the lands that they lived on. It had never even occurred to me because I was just in the States to finish my program and then go home. And so it never even occurred to me to think that way, because in my mind, I'm like, I'm just a traveler here. I'm just going to be here for a few years and I'm going to get out. But it's also just that reminder that, well, if we're extend the critique, so if you're critiquing this in Guam, then extend it out into the States too, because there are those communities whose histories who are very similar to ours, and that we should be in solidarity with them in that critique of colonialism and displacement and so on. And so let's get to a few questions, and then I want to give you a chance to talk about your research. And so, all right, now, all right, Miguel Minjola Garcia, or Aligao as he is also known. He is the only person who ever listens to Fanachu episodes to the very end, actually. He asks, okay, he wants to know, are there any women's statues or monuments in Guam, and could there be in the future, and who might be a good candidate? And so do you have any suggestions? So there are some statues of women. Now, they don't have not the same as like men. So like there's two statues of groups of women, and then there is the Serena statue. And then you will find some statues like you have like a school statue, like for like somebody named for a school and stuff like that, but nothing like Chief Kapua or something like that. And so, Gillian, did you have any ideas though on what might be a good example for like a female, like a statue that might honor sort of the Chamorro female spirit?
Wow, that's such a good question. I haven't even really thought about it. Um, I don't know if there's like one, sorry, there's like birds arguing outside my window. I don't know if there's one person that comes to mind. I don't know. I feel like it'd be hard to just pick one. I think we just need a lot of statues. Um, maybe a statue for of is there a statue of the women that saved Guahan? Um,
Ooh. I do not believe that there is. There is, so in Adelup, there is a statue that has like women in it that's for like World War II.
hmm.
And then there's the Serena statue, but I don't think there's one for the women who saved Guam from the giant fish.
Yeah, maybe that could be a cool statue. It'd probably take a lot of work to do, but I think that'd be pretty cool. I'm just trying to imagine myself like as a young Chamorro girl seeing something like that would be pretty cool. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't, someone else should make that decision.
It's no, I think that would be a good one though, because we've already got, when you think about it, we've got Magalahi Kapua, Chief Kapua, we have Magalahi Gadao, we've got Puntan dos Amantes. I think the women who saved Guam from the giant fish would be a really nice one. I think that would be a really good one. We have another question here from Zach Visagomez. He says, for years, Pacific women have been hypersexualized by art and the dusky maiden trope, such as from Paul Gauguin. If you had to pick one of your pieces that you think best serves as a rebuttal to those tropes, which piece would you pick?
I love that question. Thank you. Hmm. I don't know if there's just one that I would pick. I feel like I try to kind of challenge that in a lot of my work. Um, maybe Masakata, I feel like that one's that one's kind of my most like defiant piece, I think. Um, or let's see. Or I don't know, I feel like a lot of them kind of challenge that in some way. Or maybe Itanituho in the piece of Puuna. Um, because another thing, like a lot of my paintings have nudity in them, but I feel like for me it's in a way that is desexualized. Like I don't think there's anything sexual about this piece, right? Um, and I think as a woman, it's very frustrating how breasts are so sexualized when inherently they're not sexual, or even nudity. A nude woman is seen as sexual, even if she just is existing in the nude, you know? So I think a lot of my pieces too, I try to free the susu um, and um, yeah, challenge that idea because back in the day, like Guam is hot, you know, like we don't need to be walking around with all these clothes on if we don't have to be. And our bodies are not, um, again, aren't inherently sexual. They're not inherently like seductive. We're just existing in our bodies. Um, So yeah, but if I had to pick two, I would say this one Itunituhon or Masakata.
Let's see, no, and this one is nice too. I love the Gadao symbols as sort of the people gathered around for a rock, and then also the way sort of that Ipilens and Atdao have then sort of you've left sort of just delicate lines to suggest Atudok, the eyes, and then of course the little Ihagan Hagan Sia Gihalamitasi. I like it because some of the pieces, of course, are like this one, they can be sort of a little bit stronger, but then some of them can be, the messaging is still strong, but then can be a little bit calmer and lighter and softer. And so, but nonetheless, still very strong in the messaging. And so that's what I like about this one is that, and that's one of the things about art is that somebody might look at this and think, oh my goodness, there's Gillian, who was her anti-Catholic messaging, and she's so radical. Oh my goodness, who raised her? Didn't they? Oh my goodness, raised this wild, savage Chamarita lady. Oh my goodness, so crazy. But then they'll look at this and think, well, this one is, if not for the susu, this would be perfect.
Yeah.
GV could put this on their website and then we'd get our tourism back. This one is lovely, but it still has, but it still has sort of strong messages incorporating the motifs. And so, and so that's what, yeah, that's looking at a lot of these, they have that strength and people can pick up on them. People who are looking can find them. Oh, beautiful. And I do love these two. Just sort of I did want to ask about these two because compared to many of the others, which are, of course, have a much older ancient focus, these two are much more reminiscent of more recent times. Now they could of course be older, but this they could be more recent too at the same time when you look at them. They don't necessarily give the impression that this is 1,000 years ago. It could be like 100 years ago. So it could be like our great grandparents. And so can you talk real quick about these two, sort of Sinonads and Sitata,
Yeah,
and what
absolutely.
motivated you for these two pieces?
Yeah, so I think a lot of my earlier work is more um about my personal experience in like my generation and my age group. Either that or it's yeah, that connection back to our ancestors. And I was kind of depicting the same kind of age range in my artwork. And I wanted to really expand that and make it more intergenerational, especially since our elders are so important. And yeah, I was thinking about um the beauty of our elders, of the beauty of a biha, like with the bun and the graying hair, and um, just seeing aunties and nanas weaving. I really wanted to honor and celebrate the beauty in that too, and in our our women and our elders that are women that have really protected us and um, really cultivated our growth and sustained our culture for us to learn and to teach us. And then with the other piece, so when I was back home last February, I think, for my grandpa's death anniversary. And that was the first time my family all went back to Guam together since I was a little kid. That was like 20 years ago that was the first time we all went together. So we visited and my grandma's side of the family is from Tamuning and my dad when he was younger was growing up at Alupeng. And so he left Guahan when he was pretty young, but when he was little, like our family had all their houses in that area, and he tells me stories about fishing with his grandpa or my great grandfather. And yeah, they'd always go fishing together. And when we went back home, my dad, we all went to Alupang and because he also would tell me stories of walking across out to Alupang Island with his cousins and stuff, just for fun. Um, and yeah, so now when you go there, there's the hotel, Santa Fe Hotel. And then like that, was it the jet ski company that hangs out there? So looks a lot different than how my dad knew that place. And our family still owns the land, but it's just leased out for that hotel, which I'm not really sure what's happening with the hotel at this point. But yeah, our family doesn't live there anymore, obviously. So yeah, that was kind of hard seeing my dad see what it looks like now. Um and whenever I go home, I try to visit that place too and walk out to Alupang and yeah, just kind of sit with that space and I try to imagine what it was like before. Not that it's not still beautiful, and it's one of my favorite places on island, but definitely is jarring going there. I know a lot of military folks like to party there, and like last time I went, I was like picking up all these red Solo cups and trying to have like a peaceful moment, but people were at the beach having fun with their friends, and yeah, just knowing that that's where my family is from. But when we went during that trip, we also went to the Guam Museum, and I saw this really cool photo of the Taladzeru like weaving the Taladza. And so that was kind of the inspiration. I kind of used that a little bit as a reference for this piece. Um, and kind of just was imagining my ancestors, my great grandpa or my great great grandpa or everyone that came before them to being in that place and making their fishing nets and being in relationship with the fish there in the ocean there. Um, so yeah, that was kind of me reflecting on that experience and wanting to honor that part of my family. So I did try to include a lupeng in the background of that piece too. Um, but yeah, that's kind of, you're right. I think it's a bit more recent history, kind of thinking more about my genealogy specifically and exploring that. So yeah.
Oh no, it's bonito estinados. They're beautiful, and but I was curious because they definitely seem different than the rest of your pieces, and so I was wondering if they had a different genealogy, and literally they do have a different genealogy. And so Sidzus Masi for sharing that, and I wanted to we're just about out of time, but I wanted to ask, because you're about to finish your first year in your master's program in Pacific Island Studies at UH Manoa. And so talk to us about what is your research? What are you planning to do for in terms of like a thesis or a thesis project? Is art going to play a big role in it, or what are your plans? Malago to Tumuma.
Yeah, so art definitely is going to be a huge part of my project. In the Pacific Island Studies master's program, we have the option of like writing a traditional proper thesis, or we can do a portfolio. So I'll be doing a portfolio, although it probably will still be very thesis-like with the amount of writing I anticipate doing. But basically, my project, I'm curious about um, this kind of goes back to the Taipu Moar fundraising and mutual aid. Because during that time too, very shortly after that happened, the fires on Maui happened. And so I was kind of seeing the things that we were going through or doing as a community, kind of paralleling Hawaii. And I was thinking about these different drivers of climate change, like militarization, capitalism, and how artists are so instrumental in different social and political movements. And so my project, I'm curious about one, art as a way to envision and articulate how we see the future. Because I feel like an important part of my art journey has been grieving and reflecting on stories and experiences and honoring pain, which is important. But also now I'm kind of in a place where I want to see like how is art instilling hope and a way for us to map out the future that we want to see for our communities. Because I feel like with art, it's just so limitless and you can create these different worlds and it can really be whatever you want it to be. And so with that, I think it's such a powerful medium to um yeah, kind of think through and illustrate like this is the future that I want for Guahan or for the Pacific, and this is what that looks like to me. This is what I see the people doing, this is what I see the plants doing, this is what I see the animals doing, this is what I see the ocean doing. So I want to talk to folks and ask them like when we think about climate justice and a climate just future, what does that look like? What do you see when you think about that? Or what do you hope for it to look like? What is the future that you want the future generations to be living in? What do we want to give them to inherit? So art in that way. And then also I'm really interested in that idea of an agolpi, of really seeing And I feel like for me, visual art is a way that I really see others in myself. Literally, because you're really looking at it, but also like figuratively, because I'm like portraying or like kind of pulling out these different things, these things that I find beautiful and powerful about our people and our ancestors, and also in myself and in my community, and really celebrating that and showcasing that. So that's kind of a way that I like to practice love and care for others. Because I feel like especially when you're painting people, I feel like it's a really intimate process where you're really studying the different features that they have and the different characteristics and the things that make up their likeness. And so, yeah, I feel like that in the process of doing that is also a way to show love and care for someone and show them like I see you and this is how I see you. Um, so yeah, that's what my thesis is interested in looking at. So I'll be talking about or talking to Pacific Islanders living in Hawaii about what does that look like in the context of Hawaii, but also in the greater Pacific, because there's a lot of Pacific Islander diaspora communities here. Um, and so yeah, I'll be talking about what folks share with me and then also interpreting that in a body of artwork.
Wow. Sidus Masi. I'm very, very excited to hear more and to then see this. Um, no, it definitely makes sense because you have a master's in social work, and then you're now getting a Pacific Islanders master's too, and then you've got all this experience as an artist too, and it's Gifino Ingles full circle, or it's all coming together in an interesting way. And so I'm very, very excited. And we are out of time now, though, but I want to give you a chance just to share any final thoughts that you have. Um, if you want to tell people, more about how they can support you, or if you just, want to give a shout out to anybody or anything like that, however you want to use this time. I-uti mo na hinasomo pat siningan mo. Um, please go ahead.
Yeah, I guess really quickly. So with my research, in conjunction with that, I'm doing an artist residency with the state or Hawaii State Climate Change Action and Mitigation Commission or something like that. It's really long, but basically a commission on climate change action. And so that's also part of what's supporting my art process with this, my thesis. And so that will be culminating in a exhibition at Capel Modern here on Oahu all month of October. If anyone's on island during that time, you want to see the work that I make through this process. And I also, as part of the residency, I did a climate resilience mural with a seventh grade class here on Oahu, mostly Native Hawaiians, but also some Micronesian students as well. And kind of, yeah, talking through them with that as young folks, as emerging stewards of this Aina and as of the ocean. What do they see as a climate change impact or climate change impacts in their community? And what is the future that they want to see for Hawaii and for their islands? So I'm really excited about that piece. That's one that I have finished so far. So that will be at the exhibition if folks want to see that. I really would love for people to be able to see what the young people are thinking of and imagining for the future. But yeah, other than that, like I'm on Instagram, so I'm not really super active on my art Instagram right now, but I will be as I'm going through this process. So yeah, I feel like those are some ways to see what I'm doing and keeping up with things that I'm doing. But yeah, I guess thank you to you for inviting me to be on here again. It's such a huge honor and I'm very grateful. And yeah, thank you to all my family and friends and community who have pushed me and supported me and encouraged me. I definitely would not be doing what I'm doing if I didn't have such a strong support system. So, and that's made up of so many different people in so many different places. So thank you all. And I always carry you all with me wherever I go.
Ay, bonito ano. Si Zeus Mase. Si Diyos masi, Gillian, si Diyos masi pudi bedadna mo, ibonito na bedadna mo, pudi pinentata mo siya. Dan si Diyos masi, no todos hamzu, ni o me ega pudo me ekung o kesti fanak puestin episode fanat